Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
Okay, and welcome. I want to take a chance to introduce you to our presenters for today. They are subject matter experts for GP strategies on delivery resource management, and it is my pleasure to introduce them to you today. First, we have Megan Bridget. She is a senior director. She supports all our global training programs. Megan also recruits and hires project managers, our facilitators, and instructional designers to meet our clients' needs. She also manages the instructor scheduling, tracks certification of programs, and ensures that instructors keep up to date on client information. And also, we have Fran Calavita. She's a senior manager. She works closely with GP Strategies worldwide hubs to ensure that they have the right resources with the right skill set, language, background, and location. Fran's team coordinates all aspects of delivery resource management, including vetting, onboarding, facilitator producer readiness, and a quality assurance process to deliver virtual training on various platforms. We have a great discussion today. And with that, Megan and Fran, welcome, and I'm going to let you have it from here.
Thanks, Kim. Great, thank you, Kim, and hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to start in sharing, a little bit about our department that Fran and I lead. We lead our Delivery Resource Management Group for GP Strategies, and our Delivery Resource Management Group is our centralized hub to source all of the vital, roles such as facilitators, coaches, producers, moderators, as well as our team has built a training and certification program for effective virtual facilitation skills, as well as producer skills. And this actually includes a digital badge as well. Our team actually delivers on a wide variety of topics, from things like leadership to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to executive presence, and much, much more. And we actually have a associate network of over 1,000 resources throughout the entire globe. And we are really excited to meet with you all today and share with you more about the virtual and digital learning delivery. So to get started, we wanted to share, with you some of the trends that we're seeing. And as you can imagine, or maybe even have experienced firsthand, COVID-19 really accelerated for many organizations the need to migrate modalities of learning. A lot of organizations were very heavily focused on face-to-face learning, and as a result, they've had to migrate to virtual and digital learning. And our team has partnered with a number of organizations and Fortune 500 companies, as well as nonprofits, to really help support them on their journey to virtual and digital learning. And as such, we've seen a lot of really interesting trends. So we really wanted to start our session today with, kind of what we're seeing these days. First, we've seen organizations begin to move from what we're kind of tagging as surviving to thriving. And what I mean by that is, at the beginning of the pandemic, many learning organizations had to quickly pivot their learning into a virtual and digital world. This was at times kind of a scramble for many organizations. They might have been lacking, maybe the talent or the expertise, sometimes resources, and really time at the end of the day. But now that, we've been in the virtual and digital learning, for a period of time, organizations are really switching their focus, moving more into that thriving, and really creating sustainable approaches and infrastructures to help support virtual and digital learning. Also, a lot of organizations are reporting feeling stretched thin. They're faced with new demands from their organizations, priorities that are linked to maybe corporate objectives or business objectives. So there are a lot of new demands coming their way, but a lot of organizations too are reporting that they're still playing catch up from items that maybe were put on the back burner at the beginning of the pandemic. This challenge has resulted in organizations really needing to examine their talent, their infrastructure, and make decisions. Do we possibly upskill and train our resources and existing resources, or maybe leverage the partnership of various vendors to offset their talent gaps? We've also seen client partners capture lessons learned and develop best practices, which is wonderful to see. They've seen really what's working well and also what wasn't working so well. And then they've made adjustments, to their program management and delivery methods. And one example that Fran and I, consistently see as a best practice is, making sure that the producer and the facilitator have clear understanding of expectations of their role before the session or before the program. So we're seeing a lot of really good best practices and helping our clients to recognize those as well. And then lastly, you'll see here on the far right, virtual and digital learning is here to stay. With large successes that many partners have experienced with the virtual and digital learning, they actually want to be intentional about what programs they keep virtual and what might return, face to face. So it is here to stay, even as things, continue to open up. They're really finding the benefits of that virtual and digital learning. So today, Fran and I will be sharing with you the 3 roles that we've seen organizations need in order to be successful in creating that sustainable and effective virtual and digital learning. In today's session, you're actually even witnessing the need that we have to make sure that this session moves very smoothly. So for instance, we have Kim as our wonderful producer and host for today's session. She's going to help to make sure any technical issues or any challenges are resolved. She's helping to make sure it's smooth and supported. And behind the scenes, somebody that you didn't even see, we actually have as our moderator. They're helping to make sure that registration was easy, that you got the links that you needed. They're also going to be in charge of distributing recordings and any handouts. So we actually are demonstrating these roles today, and of course, Fran and I as your facilitators. So we are actually going to dive into the importance and impact that each of these roles play within the virtual delivery team. But before we dive in a little further, I want to get a quick pulse check with a quick poll here. Seeing that virtual delivery is here to stay, as I just mentioned, let's think about some of the benefits that organizations have seen, which is really kind of leading them to continue down this path of virtual. So with that, Kim, we can go ahead and open up the poll. So you'll see a poll happen for you real quickly, and feel free to select as many that apply. But the question is, what benefits has your organization seen from moving from face-to-face over to virtual and digital learning? So go ahead and answer. You can select as many that apply because it could be more than just one. Our options are reduced travel costs, broader connections, time and efficiency, consistency through the organization, global audiences, and accessible content and learning. So definitely some of the common benefits we're seeing many organizations report, but curious to get your thoughts.
Megan, we have a couple people still in the progress, so if we just give it a few more seconds before we close it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Kim. And thanks, everybody. Yeah, and if you're having any troubles with the polling feature, feel free, you can send a chat too.
I think we did get a comment in the chat.
Yes. Erin had said, I'd also add the ability to hire remote employees.
Great point. Absolutely. They don't have to be in a specific location. Now that we're kind of in this virtual world, they can work anywhere. And we've actually had team members and all across the globe supporting producing events. As long as they're available during that time, it's worked out great.
All right, I'm going to close the poll now, Megan. It seems like everybody's kind of contributed, and then I'll show the results. And
all right,
it should just take a couple seconds.
All right, wonderful. So hopefully everybody can see the poll results, but it looks like the top 2, which is not surprising to me. This is probably the one that's most commonly reported to us as partners, has been time and efficiency. Definitely there can be a lot of efficiency. You don't have to worry about travel or going to a different room and anything like that. You can kind of be anywhere, anytime, which is wonderful. As well as reduced travel costs. Yeah, saving the company and organization, costs on the travel to bring participants. That's been a big benefit that a lot of organizations have seen. And then that accessibility. Yeah, learners really want to learn anytime, anywhere. And we'll talk a little bit about, how the world has changed that's really necessitating that accessibility to that learning, anytime, anywhere. All right, wonderful. So while there are, many benefits, as you all shared, and Erin, thank you for your additional comment there, absolutely, on being able to hire remote. There are tons of benefits, but there can be some challenges too to the virtual and digital learning. So we want to get your thoughts. So using the chat function, let us know some challenges your organization has faced, maybe, with this virtual and digital learning or virtual and digital world that we're in. This could be business challenges, learner challenges, or others that you're thinking of. So go ahead, you can share in the chat box. It takes a moment to type on in. All right, I see some that are coming through. All right, IT accessibility. Ooh, selecting the right platform. I feel like we could even do an entire session on how to select the right platform.
Absolutely.
There are tons that are out there and they're changing every day. All right, roles and responsibilities changing. All right, and the need for their development, absolutely. Connectivity and technology. I mean, I wouldn't be lying if I wouldn't say that Kim, Fran, and I were talking a little bit before this session started, and we were worried because there's a storm coming through, Fran and Kim's way. So we had to think of contingencies. So yeah, a lot of those types of challenges, technical learning. Sometimes it might be, the different type of content that might be challenging to facilitate in a virtual world. And I saw too from David, very good on lack of engagement. All right, very good. So it's important, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is it's important to think about, some of the challenges that are facing your organization. And I wanted to make sure to, kind of pause and touch on some of these, very common challenges that our client partners have expressed, and that I'm even seeing that all of you are sharing in the chat box, because it's important that as we look at this virtual and digital learning, not to have blind spots. We think of all the good things, but we need to think of some of the challenges and how to overcome them. One of them is, kind of what we're tagging as Zoom fatigue, and poor Zoom, that platform kind of got the brunt of being branded as Zoom fatigue, but this really goes for any virtual fatigue. And sometimes that's, people being tired of being in a virtual setting. They're tired of being on webcams. They are tired of the nuances of being in a Zoom call or other platform calls. For instance, we probably have heard, enough times this year of so-and-so, you're on mute, that we don't want to hear that anymore. So there's definitely been that fatigue, which can drive down, engagement. Also balancing work and personal life. A lot of people are still working from home, which removes that natural boundary that sometimes the office can set for you. And this can sometimes impact virtual learning. So for instance, over the past year, we've probably all been in a virtual call or learning session where we hear pets barking, or perhaps children or family members in the background. And that's part of our new normal. That's part of our new normal, working in this virtual and digital world. And another common challenge is that sometimes people feel disconnected from their colleagues. There's no longer that water cooler opportunity, or catching up on personal items when you're walking in the hallways, and losing that ability to network and to meet others who you maybe don't get to interact with every day, outside the office. And as we look at the virtual and digital learning, again, it's important that we have that awareness of those different challenges and don't allow them to become blind spots. So today we want to share firsthand an example of a client partner who successfully migrated a large program that was predominantly face-to-face over to a virtual and digital learning journey. And as they did this migration, they were able to successfully leverage the 3 roles we're going to focus on today. And Fran's going to dive into those a little bit deeper in just a few moments. But recently we rolled out the blended learning program, and the organization wanted to find a way to really offer, a leadership training to their employees that was scalable, consistent, and flexible. Oops, and I apologize, I hit the button a little too far there. Sorry about that, everybody. So I wanted to tee it up by sharing a little bit about the right conditions. So what made this so successful? And there were really 4 key aspects that made this program really successful. We actually had nearly 100% voluntary completion with really high engagement. A lot of you mentioned engagement earlier. So one of the first ones is recognizing that there were changing needs. This was accelerated by the pandemic and a work from home environment. So really understanding the needs of this global audience. The second was investment, on part of this key stakeholders. And this was both financial, but also investment of their time. And that's a big one. Sometimes we want to pay for something and call it good enough, but it's not quite good enough. And that's where successful change management was extremely critical for this rollout. Change management, it definitely requires time and energy, especially upfront and during the planning period. You want to get buy-in from leadership and learners, and it requires a mind shift of the organization, both from the top down as well as from the bottom up. And lastly, they understood that more and more employees are used to getting learning at their own pace. We were talking about that accessibility as one of those benefits. And 5 weeks of the digital program, it actually gave learners an opportunity to learn when their schedule allowed, so when it was possible for them. But they were also able to engage asynchronously with their colleagues and be able to build relationships and extend their network. So when the virtual session came time, they were hitting the ground running, and they were able to really stay connected. So now that I've set the table a little bit, I'm going to turn things over to Fran to share more about the program itself as well as the various roles involved. So Fran, turning over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. And hello again, everyone. You're seeing on the screen an outline of a blended learning journey, an 8-week experience. As Megan mentioned, this is self-paced. Learners can work anytime that works for them, day or night. As we know, for many of us, 9 to 5 workday is gone. You get to experience this journey with a network of other leaders sharing their management accomplishments and challenges. Learning through a range of interactive options such as videos, podcasts, articles, discussion threads, and other tools accessible anytime, anywhere with support from your moderator. And then having the guidance of a virtual leadership expert, which is your coach, to challenge and support you every step of the way. The journey is 5 weeks of digital platform learning with a virtual coach and moderator, and 3 VILT sessions with a virtual facilitator, which is, again, usually the coach, and a producer as well for those events, and continued moderation support on the platform. So as we know, leadership training is essential, and we've all sat through many face-to-face leadership trainings. You can go to the next, Megan. With the shift to digital learning, we want to make sure that the learners are engaged throughout the journey. That is why these 3 roles are so critical. So the first one, virtual facilitator/coach. The facilitator is the heart and soul of the experience. He or she will make sure the learners have an understanding of the content and engage them, as well as to make it a safe place to speak their mind, share insight and experiences with their virtual colleagues. The producer, which is sometimes called the host, supports the facilitator as well as the learners. They're like the glue to make sure the learners are having an engaging and interactive session with little disruption, and also make sure the facilitator and training is timely and on track. The producer gains the learner's trust, and if they have any issues or questions, as the facilitator is doing what they do best, which is facilitating, they can assist in the background. And then the moderator is somewhere in between the facilitator and producer and helps bring the experience to life. The moderator has a very visible role in providing a human element to this digital experience. They need to keep the learners engaged throughout a lengthy cohort, as well as provide content for learners, responding to comments in a timely manner. and just being the primary point of contact for learners and encouraging the participation throughout the entire digital experience. So next we're going to look at this high-level experience flow. The learners receive this flow and map that guides them. Please note this is a leadership program, so as you can see by the various topics, this journey incorporates VILT, independent learning, as we mentioned. Your virtual coach and moderator will guide the learners through this journey. We also have a map for the coach, producer, and moderator. This way they know their roles and responsibilities to help bring the journey to life and make the learners experience a success. So let's do something fun. Use your annotation pointer. And does everybody know where that is located? That's on the left-hand side, right, Megan? Is that squiggly little tool there?
Yeah, on the left-hand side, you're
Yeah.
going to see the squiggly tool that if you hover over it says annotation, it'll give you an option where you can draw a shape or a line, and you can change your color feature as well.
Yeah. So we're going to use that annotation tool on this map to share when you believe the coach, moderator, and producers are engaged. So if you'd like to do that, you can do that right on this map.
Brandon, Megan, I just want to add that if they are making any marks on the screen, you have to move your mouse away from it for it to actually show, or hit the enter key.
Yes. Thank you. That's why we have you as our producer to help with that. Oh, I see a nice purple circle. Great. And I see arrows. So everybody's using, their pointer tool and all types of tools. And this is, you guys are right on target. You know, they definitely start right when it's, when we get started, or even before the actual cohort starts. And they were all engaged from before that, and then until well after the wrap up. So great job. Great job, everyone. All right, so what do you think? How can this approach benefit your organization and learners? Let us know in the chat. How can a blended learning journey benefit your organization and learners? Okay. Free up the trainers. Greater inclusion. Great. Definitely bite-sized bits. Yeah, flexibility, providing flexibility. Like we said, people aren't working from 9 to 5. Some people would rather do it on their own time, would rather do it in private. Some people take longer than others. Greater cost benefits, absolutely. We're not sending everybody to a face-to-face workshop, and the cost and scalability. Efficiency, meeting others around the company, learners better prepared and equipped to benefit. Great. Oh, all great comments and different learning styles. Absolutely. Okay, so the learners receive the experience, flow, and map that guides them, but please note that, as we mentioned, there's also a map for the coach, producer, and moderator. This way, they know their roles and responsibilities to help bring the journey to life and make the learners experience a success. Before we asked you when the 3 roles take place, and you can see there's a lot of steps that need to take place to create the right conditions for the learning journey and experience. On this map, it shows the different tasks rather than the weeks, like on the learner's map. Sometimes it can take 8 weeks, sometimes less or more on the complexity or the length of the program. The good thing is that the programs like these are highly customizable to fit your organization's needs and goals. Right. So next, we're just going to In the past year plus, it has been challenging to say the least, and a lot of transformation. We hear concerns from learners that are not always engaged or don't have connections to their peers as they did with face-to-face learning. And seeing this feedback demonstrates that having the right infrastructure and conditions will lead to a positive learning experience. So let's just read a few comments. I really like the mixed media approach to communicating the program's concepts. This was an excellent session. The subject was what I initially wrote down as being a skill set that I wanted to improve in. The facilitator coach was engaging and the subject matter was fun and informative. All right. Well, as always, if you have questions, please enter them in the chat and we'll try to do a Q&A after. Now I'll turn it over to my sidekick, Megan.
Wonderful. And thank you, Fran. It was very helpful to hear more about, the learning journey and experience. And we just wanted to stay on here, this slide, just for a few moments on some of the takeaways from today's session. It's, many of you shared some of the different, ideas that you had, and we wanted to make sure to highlight some of those key considerations. So even though we focused on the right roles, if those roles aren't accepted into your organization or they're valued, it won't be successful. Pushing for learning change can be really critical to the success. And again, remember, if it's not set up properly in the organization, you're not getting buy-in or support, this is going to have a negative impact. So the infrastructure is a piece of it, but having that support and buy-in is critical. So we recognize that we're right at time, but Fran and I are happy to stay on a few moments as well for any questions. We're also going to leave here for you our contact information. Here you can see our email address and contact information. You can always feel free to reach out to us if you don't have a chance to submit a question. And if we see any questions and answers that come through, we'll make sure to capture these as well. All right, so we'll just a few more moments.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
so thanks. First of all, I just wanted to say that you covered a lot during the session today. I want to thank you for your time and everyone's time today. And we are going to be sending the recording out and a link to a PDF version of the slides during today's presentation. But if you want to stay on for a few minutes, I have some questions that we can ask the presenters. Are you ready?
Sure.
Ready.
Okay, I have a question that is, what is the difference between a moderator and a producer? I think, Fran, you covered it a little bit, but maybe you can go, or Megan, a little further in detail.
Go ahead, Fran, you can take that away.
Sure. So the producer is usually the host or producer or the individual behind the scenes who helps support the facilitator. So they're helping learners with technical issues, they're helping upload material, they're opening and closing polls and breakouts, but mainly they're behind the scenes for the learners if they have any questions, while the facilitator, like we said, is doing what they need to do, and that's facilitate. A moderator has more of a role where they're also helping upload videos. If there's a platform where there are questions that need answered in the chat, they might be helping to answer or really more of a co-facilitator to that facilitator in some cases, where they're going to step in and work, to help deliver the session, especially for these very large cohorts where sometimes, we need that extra set of hands. But they're also in the background helping with video, they're uploading white papers and files, they're sending out communications. And so their role might be, like I said, a little bit in between the producer and the facilitator role. I hope that answers your question.
I'm sure. It sounded good to me, Fran.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I have a question here that from Sharon Casey, and she wants to know, do you think sending out the slides beforehand can hinder attendees' attentions?
Great question. We can see it both ways. Sometimes they can, start moving ahead of the content, and lose track of where they are, as far as listening to the facilitator and being engaged in the content. Sometimes we've seen as a best practice, that there's actually a participant guide rather than maybe the PowerPoint slides itself. That way they have sections where they can capture notes or ideas or capture key takeaways. So ideally, a participant guide might be, a best practice. But as long as the facilitator keeps them engaged and recognizes people aren't moving ahead, but that is a risk. So something to keep in mind. But certainly, I don't think it's a deal breaker.
Nice. Okay. Let's do one more question and then we'll kind of wrap it up. And if there's any other questions, we can answer them in a follow-on. So we want to be conscious of everyone's time. So just this final question, I think, works really well as a conclusion. What are some best practices you've seen when working with clients?
Sure, and I can start, Brandon, if you would like to
Sure.
chime in as
Absolutely.
well. So, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of really great best practices that are coming out of working with our clients. We talked a little bit earlier about the facilitator and the producer making sure that they're aligning on key responsibilities and duties. We've also seen some best practices on how to be effective virtual facilitator, making sure to read what we call virtual body tone or body language. It's a little bit hard to kind of gauge that as we're so used to that in a face-to-face setting. So looking for those nonverbal cues, looking for those verbal cues, how to make sure that you're keeping that audience engaged, as well as a best practice of making sure to be conscientious and working with an instructional design team and adapting their content, say from a face-to-face learning experience over to virtual and digital. Just because it worked well face-to-face doesn't mean it's going to be the same in a virtual setting. So really that partnership that the facilitator can bring to the instructional design team has been something we're seeing a lot of clients leverage that expertise and come away with a much better product and a much learning experience.
Yep. Yeah. And that alignment.
Too.
Yeah, just the alignment, as Megan had said, between the producer and the facilitator, or the moderator and the facilitator, making sure they're aligned every step of the way. And, everybody I know is meeting to death, but, we really think, even with the clients, kickoff meetings, really making sure that they have an understanding, we have an understanding, meeting all of the resources, involved, and, really making sure that it's successful on both ends.
This webinar is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can access more webinars or download additional resources at gpstrategies.com/resource-library.